Hello, everybody. This is Wednesday, August 17,
16.
2017. And I have the pleasure of being here with Carolyn Baker. And Carolyn and I are putting together a number of very large scale projects this year that I think we're both very, very excited about. But what I'd like to talk with you about right now is something that's been long standing that Carolyn's been doing for years and years now, is her daily news digest. And for those of you who aren't connected with that daily news digest, which I recommend highly, subscribe to, go to carolynbaker.net and subscribe. Today, Carolyn has included, as she often does, a beautiful chunk of her own writing, extraordinary and timely and potent writing today. And so I wanted to put up this video chunk for Carolyn's site, for the site that we now share in the work that we're doing together in livingresilience.net. And also the various Facebook pages. Really, the bottom line is I was deeply moved by what Carolyn was saying, as I often am with her books and articles. And I invite you to listen closely. This is something that who have read too much about the collapse of human and earth systems over these years and have been really thrown as much as anybody in this past year, watching the changes in our political and cultural world, not to mention environmental. I'd invite you to listen closely and take close note of what Carolyn's suggesting that we all do. I certainly am taking note and getting myself into action out of that. So, Carolyn, without further ado, please.
Thanks, Dean. Given the current events that are happening around us here in August of 2017, I felt compelled at the end of my daily news digest to speak to some of those events and try to put everything in a context. After 5 or 6 years of researching world events back in 2007, I finally understood that the events that I was researching were not separate, disconnected realities. And in that year of 2007, I watched the documentary, which many of you may have seen, What a Way to Go, Life at the End of Empire, which anyone can view for free on YouTube. And in watching that, I grasped the reality of the collapse of industrial civilization, and I began writing books about that topic in 2008. In 2007, I also created the Daily News Digest, and I've been committed to bringing it to every day that I'm not sick or traveling for the last 10 years. I really want to make this statement that I put in the digest today. I really want to point people to the fact that it's a clarion call to all of us to let the reality of the collapse of industrial civilization and all of these systems sink into another layer of our skin and our psyches and our hearts. I'm pretty sure that most of us have read books and articles and watched documentaries that sear into our consciousness the all too glaring realities of what collapse is likely to look like and feel like. I suppose the worst one that most of us have read and talked about is The Road, a novel and a movie that kind of makes the skin crawl. And even though you realize that collapse is not going to play out in exactly the ways that you've imagined, your heart and your mind is heavy with a sense of impending darkness and dread. I think that is true throughout the human species right now. And in addition to all that you've learned about collapse, you've also learned about abrupt climate change and its implications. And everywhere around you, you see evidence of near-term extinction of most of life on Earth. And as the collapse of industrial civilization, as if that weren't enough to worry about, now we have the reality of extinction. Yet one of the most obvious likelihoods in all of our collapse projections and fantasies has been the strong probability that collapse will play out violently. Famine and lack of clean drinking water and total deprivation have been at the top of the list in most of our collapse fantasies. The fantasy that we would have to fight others or be killed for the little food or water that we had for ourselves. And of course, we've had the birth of the prepper industry, which has told people to find a safe place and gather all these food and provisions together. We're now really beginning to understand that that's basically useless because there is no safe place, and food and water have their limits in terms of running out. So what's now playing out in our midst is not violence based on economic scarcity, but violence indicative of the total unraveling of our social fabric. Let's just put catastrophic climate change aside for a moment. Let's pretend that we have nothing else to be concerned about besides collapse. And let's just look at the symptoms of the total unraveling just in the United States. We have a massive opioid crisis resulting from an epidemic of despair. Despair over loss of jobs, over loss of health care, loss of meaning and purpose, and loss of the fantasy of the American dream. A psychotic, narcissistic, sociopathic president who's intentionally playing on and manipulating this despair and salivating over the open hostility and divisiveness already boiling over in our culture, that person is our chief executive. An impending economic crisis that is certain to erupt, which will leave most of the 99% severely impoverished, if not indigent. That's in our future. And this psychotic excuse for a chief executive spews his bellicose threats of nuclear annihilation toward another bellicose psychotic in North Korea. And like two mental patients in a rubber room, if only we could get them in a hospital in a rubber room, they leave us wondering every day if this will be the day that our planet is instantly incinerated, as opposed to the longer process of climate and planetary catastrophe. Now, as you know, my work in this past decade has been all about preparing and supporting people emotionally and spiritually for what is now at hand. There is no future tense when speaking of the collapse of systems. We're in the throes of it. And it's tempting to engage in conversations about suicide and what are the best and least distressing ways of exiting the planet. Of course, that's always an option which everyone has a right to exercise. However, I'd like to submit that we can spend a great deal of energy fantasizing and planning for that option, or we can invest the same or perhaps a larger amount of energy in becoming spiritual warriors and spiritual midwives. And when I say warrior, I don't mean that we're going to fight anything except our own colonization by industrial civilization. And when I say midwife, I don't mean that we're going to assist in giving birth to anything except the deepest layers of love, compassion, surrender, service, and connection with our inner sacred wisdom, with each other, and with Earth than we've ever imagined possible. And how do we do this? Well, first, I think we need to understand one of the most important and sanest responses that we can have right now is deep, deep grieving. And I don't suggest that we do grief work alone. But if there's anyone that you trust that you can sit with and grieve, or if there's a group or a workshop where you can do this, I say run, don't walk, to do that work. Most of you are already familiar with Francis Weller's grief workshops. You can find out about them at francisweller.net. And Dean Walker and I are going to be offering grief counseling and grief training in the near future. If you haven't read Francis Weller's book, The Wild Edge of Sorrow, please do so. I'm also going to be leading a grief weekend in early December in New Jersey, and details of that are going to be forthcoming on our websites and on Facebook. Secondly, if you've not already developed a spiritual practice, begin to do that immediately. And yeah, if you feel the need to store food and water and medical supplies, by all means do that. But as my friend Jungian analyst Marion Woodman says, trying to deal with the global crisis without a spiritual practice is like walking into a forest fire wearing a paper tutu. If you want suggestions on how to develop a spiritual practice on your own, contact me or Dean. And then thirdly, get busy serving someone or something. You know, back in the 60s, Bob Dylan sang about doing service. He says, you got to serve somebody. And there are tens of millions of ways to serve. And I say, follow the calling of whatever issue most breaks your heart open. And if you do that, you won't go wrong. And then fourthly, resist the madness in your community and in your country in ways that call you. It's too late. It's far too late for trying to educate this culture in nonviolence. It's already out of control. Violence is already out of control. It's going to get much worse, much worse. We're now living in a fascist autocracy, not only ruled by an autocratic president, but autocrats in every cabinet department and within the halls of Congress who are behind all of the psychotic blathering of Donald Trump, you know, as he's doing all of that, and the media is focusing on that all day long. These folks are working to destroy what's left of our planet and all that is still good and decent in our society. And I know you want to impeach Trump, and I want to impeach Trump, but we cannot impeach our way out of fascism. You already know the order of succession. Mike Pence, then Paul Ryan, then Rex Tillerson. Take a moment to let that sink in. And please, please consider attending one of the pilot courses entitled Resilience Bridge, which Dean and I are teaching in September in Ashland, Oregon, and October in Boulder, Colorado. I will say it again, there's no training like it anywhere. And this is exactly the kind of training that we all need in order to navigate what's upon us and what's directly ahead of us. In case you hadn't noticed, business as usual is very far behind us in the rear view mirror of our time. Come work with us on building genuine, robust resilience in the face of our predicament. And now, as I finish these thoughts with you, I'd like to leave you with an amazing poem by Jennifer Wellwood, jenniferwellwood.com. And this poem is called The Dakini Speaks, the Dakini, D-A-K-I-N-A, The Dakini Speaks. My friends, let's grow up. Let's stop pretending we don't know the deal here. Or if we truly haven't noticed, let's wake up and notice. Look, everything that can be lost will be lost. It's simple. How could we have missed it for so long? Let's grieve our losses fully, like ripe human beings. Please, let's not be so shocked by them. Let's not act so betrayed, as though life had broken her secret promise to us. Impermanence is life's only promise to us, and she keeps it with ruthless impeccability. To a child, she seems cruel, but she's only wild, and her compassion exquisitely precise, brilliantly penetrating, luminous with truth. She strips away the unreal to show us the real. This is the true ride. Let's give ourselves to it. Let's stop making deals for a safe passage. There isn't one anyway, and the cost is too high. We're not children anymore. The true human adult gives everything for what cannot be lost. Let's dance the wild dance of no hope. Thank you.
Well, Carolyn, thank you so much for reading all that you've written so potently in the Daily News Digest today. And I just want to thank you for putting so much in a concentrated fashion, so much of what I know both of us are bringing to all the various things that we're working on. And the whole spirit of what we're working on is exactly what you're describing. Like, who will we be together in the face of these incredible, daunting predicaments that we face? And what are the inner skills and capacities that we can work on, that we can build, that we can strengthen within ourselves and with each other as we turn to face that which is coming on like a freight train? You know,
Right.
completely with what you said in the middle of your statement, that this is not a future tense situation anymore. It is now.
Right.
So we will have put in all the email addresses and links and so on in very easy to see during all of your reading and all of this video. And for all of you who have taken the time to listen to this, thank you. Please take it on board, take it into your heart, and let it call you in the way that it does. I certainly am. And please do not hesitate to contact us if we can provide any sort of service or coaching or provide references and materials in the name of that kind of resilience building that Carolyn's calling for. We look forward to your continued partnership with us in building this tremendous set of resources and courses. And Carolyn and Andrew Harvey are just about to release a potent new book that couldn't be more timely. Carolyn, do you want to say anything about
Yeah, thanks for reminding me of that. The book is Savage Grace, Living Resiliently in the Dark Night of the Globe. I expect it to be up on Amazon in about a month and available probably in a couple of weeks at your local bookstore. So watch Facebook, watch my site and our site for news about this book and how you can get your hands on it as soon as possible. It's a powerful book. It's the boldest thing either one of us has ever written.
So one more repetition of the invitation to come to one of the pilot courses we're doing of a course we're calling Resilience Bridge. And that's in September in Ashland, Oregon, and in October in Boulder. And again, the information's there on the screen. We look forward to each and every one of you coming and contributing to that work. And thank you very much for your time and your attention.
Let's build our resilience together, and we hope to see you in either Ashland or Boulder.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you, Dean.